Screenagers, welcome back. Another episode of the Canon, your favorite movie podcast, the only movie podcast providing you with the most essentials movies, or I guess I should say the most essential movies. We've got another great one today. I am joined by the always great Duke and the always greater than Duke, RJ. Duke, RJ. How are you guys doing?
Not bad.
The intro is a little sus, but I mean, let's start by setting the bar a little lower. So
tomorrow in Magnolia, we see lots of clouds.
Sorry, my Alexa wants to say hi too. Apparently,
degrees Fahrenheit and a low of 64 degrees.
Okay, well that's not too
Alexa,
bad.
what do you think of Breakfast Club?
Oh no, don't do that, Duke. Well, Duke is battling through a bit of a cold, so we thank him for toughing it out. And RJ is just always a trooper. I don't know if you're battling through anything specific, but
Alexa,
besides just
Alexa.
battling Alexa to get through this episode.
Technology, always battling through technology.
Yeah. Damn it, technology.
And a Weimaraner who wants my attention right now.
Dang it.
Oh.
Well,
we're sorry. His name is Duke, by the way. So maybe that's why he thought I was talking to him.
Well, that makes sense.
That's funny. Well, today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite movies. I think a favorite of both Duke and RJ as well. Surprisingly, not a favorite of too many other folks at the Canon at Screen Age Wasteland. It seems, but definitely a favorite for the three of us. We are, of course, talking about The Breakfast Club, one of the great teen movies of all time. Just for a little bit of background, in case there are any screenagers out there who actually do enjoy reading what's on the website, the write-up version of this Canon entry was done by yours truly. I did the write-up, and for those who are familiar with what we do for all of our Canon write-ups, we usually have 2 to 3 other contributing writers for Screen Age Wasteland. These whiskeys are getting to me, man. Fuck. We have two or three other contributors from Screen Age Wasteland also write up some words about what the movie means to them. So RJ and Duke, you guys both did write-ups for The Breakfast Club. This might be the first time that we've had a trio on an episode match the trio of writers for a Canon entry. So that's exciting.
Yeah, this is like remaking a movie and bringing everybody back in the same roles. It's unheard of.
Yes. We're trailblazers. I like it.
Exactly. There we go.
I love it. So, okay, before we get into the actual movie, I think the obvious question and place to start is, what cliques were you guys a part of in high school, if any? Did your high schools sort of resemble the clique makeup of something like The Breakfast Club, or was it maybe a little bit different? And Duke, why don't you answer that one first?
Oh man,
I feel like you've got a great answer.
Well, I grew up in a small town, so like my graduating class was only like 12 to 15 people. So
what?
Yeah, which is, for a New York baby like yourself, Raph, must be hard to wrap your head around. But yeah, so it's funny because, I'm watching The Breakfast Club last night, and I'm just thinking like, when they all start bonding, and I was like, it's wild to think kind of just because of how small our class was, like we went on a ski trip when we were in grade 12, and I think that'd be unheard of for, any grade, to, like if, 50 or more people, they wouldn't do a group ski trip. And if they did, they'd be all separated into their cliques or whatever. So, but no, we kind of all got along pretty well. I mean, the teachers at least would be saying that to us when we graduated, that we were the best class in terms of actually, getting along and being nice to one another. So, I mean, there was definitely, friend groups, but just going off our class, we were all pretty well chummy. And then, with the years, one or two above us, there were some splitting off, with the girls. But for the guys, the 8 or so guys in our class, we surprisingly got along quite well. Like we would, as much as you'd make fun of each other and whatnot. But no, we got along quite well. So I mean, there was varying waves of popularity, but at least in my friend group, it was pretty much everybody. We were pretty even. Yeah, it wasn't Breakfast Club, with the bully and the basket case. So yeah.
Wow, Duke, I have so many follow-up questions about what it was like going to having a high school experience like yours. That's so interesting to me.
I
So
got a
how many
good
people
comparison to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask how many people were in your. I assume the entire K through 12 was in the same.
Oh yeah, same building.
School. How many people was that total in the whole school?
Let me just do some quick math. Yeah, I'd say it's 250 to 300. I'd say. Some classes had had 20 people or so.
Whoa.
Yeah,
crazy.
30 would be the biggest. Like if a class had 30, it was like, whoa. But no, yeah, like about 250 to 300. I couldn't tell you what it is now. I'd say that, but
it's ballooned up to like 500.
We had the oil boom going on, which helped a lot with numbers, and we had a timely renovation at one point that combined the high school at the time into a K to 12, and we tore down the elementary school, which probably, at least my parents seem to think so, helped that school not get shut down, and it'd be kind of stuck around. So yeah, exciting stuff in a small town Canadian prairie. So
That's so cool. So that experience was totally different.
Different, but yet when I watch The Breakfast Club, I can draw comparisons, and maybe later I'm watching Breakfast Club, and there's something that an event that happened at our school that I think was a waste of money, and you could have just put The Breakfast Club on. So maybe later I'll dive into that, because I think The Breakfast Club sums up being a high schooler a lot better than any event the school tries to put on to make a big kumbaya session with all the students. So
that's definitely hold on to that thought. RJ, what about you? What was your high school experience like? Were there cliques? Were there more than 15 people? What did it look like for you?
Well, I was going to start with, I had a small, class as well, and then Duke came in with the 12 kids, so now it seems huge in comparison, but there were about
families bigger than Duke's high school graduating class. Sorry.
So my graduating class had about, I think it was like 120 kids.
Oof.
So which is relatively small for other areas, but I'm from a small town in Texas, and there are in the cities and suburb areas, there's the high schools that have thousands of kids, and that always seemed huge to me, but I guess everything is relative. We definitely had cliques, lots of cliques. I would identify then and now as a nerd.
Hell yeah.
I was Brian the Brain, and maybe a little bit of the basket case as well, but
nice.
And it's as is made clear in the movie, and I'm sure we'll get into, we're all a little bit of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I've got both of you guys beat in terms of class size.
Is that a good thing?
I don't know if that's a good thing. My high school class was about 750, 775 graduating class. Entire high school was like 3,000 kids.
So you do not know all of your classmates?
No,
you would have never had a class with everybody.
No, there were definitely
names being read. And that's just wild to me.
at graduation, and I was like, I've never heard of that person like a day in my life. So I think because of that, like because it was so big, it kind of like there's like sort of like a bell curve for cliques in high schools. I feel like because my high school was so big, there certainly were popular factions, but there were jocks, you know, all that stuff. There were the rich kids, there were sort of nerdier kids, there were a few basket cases, there were some burnouts, we'll say, but there was like a lot of crossover between who was in what group. You know, it wasn't like a really strict sort of rigid social structure. Like there were burnouts who were jocks, there were jocks who were nerdy kids, there were basket cases who were popular, you know, like everyone, like RJ, like you said, like everyone, like we all are a bit of all of these characters. And I don't know if it's because of the size of the high school that I went to, or maybe because I was going to high school in a post Breakfast Club world where it was sort of more accepted for everyone to be a bit of everything and not just fall into, again, these super rigid sort of cliques that are typically set up in high school. So, you know, for me, when I first watched this movie, I did identify with all of the characters in really interesting ways. But I feel like most people sort of see themselves more as like a Brian. Oh my God, what's the name of the character who's what's the name of the basket case?
I have no clue. Just call her Ali
Actress is
Sheedy.
Ali Sheedy. The oh my God.
Oh, I got it. I'm on your
Allison.
Canon article. Allison Reynolds.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you think that's a fair assessment? Do you think that most people see themselves as more Brian and Allison as like outcasts in the world, or do you think it does really depend
Yeah.
on like who you are?
100%.
Yeah, because I think
Or Bender.
you know, well, I feel like Bender and Claire and even I can't think of Emilio Estevez's character.
Andrew.
Andrew, there we go. I think they represent more like extremes
Mm-hmm.
that in the spectrum of a high school class, and you know, the popular kids, that is not going to be the biggest group. It's just by its nature. The popular kids is exclusive. That's so, but also the number of kids who fall into it, at least in my experience, into the category of criminal, was also a very small group. And then there was
Mm-hmm.
everybody else in between that was in, like you said, more of the Brian and Allison range.
So, okay, before we jump into more of the movie and all the different characters and, you know, everything that they represent, let's go to the beginning. RJ, what was your first time seeing this movie, and what was your initial reaction to it?
So I don't know when the first time I saw it was. I was 3 when this movie came out, so it was just part of the world. It was just a fact of growing up in, you know, as an 80s baby. You
Mm-hmm.
just you had the Breakfast Club. It was on, you know, it was on TV all the time. People talked about it. People referenced it. So I can't ever remember sitting down for the first time and watching it.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to think, but nothing comes to mind. So it's just always yet another movie that's just always been there for me.
You can't even think of like the first time that you sat down and watched it all the way through.
No, you know, I'm sure that I saw bits and pieces of it on, you know,
Mm-hmm.
for all of you youngins out there. Back in my day, um, you had channels on the TV that just played things all the time, and you had to be sitting in front of it at the time that it came on to catch it. So, you know, if I turned on the TV and it was 10 minutes into the Breakfast Club, well, I watched all but 10 minutes of it. Sometimes, you know, you catch part of the middle, sometimes part of the end, but I don't.
So then I guess my next question is, how do you What's your relationship to it now? I think you mentioned in your write-up that you now have a child of teenage who's a teenager.
Yes.
Have you watched it with said offspring? How did they respond to it? And like, how do you feel about it now as an adult person?
I have not. My kiddo is on the younger teen side,
Mm-hmm.
and so we have not gotten to the Breakfast Club yet. Although I think that I think that she would like it. And once she got past all of the cringe of the hair and the music and the terms that they use, but
That hair's not even that cringe in the Breakfast Club. It's pretty tame compared to other movies.
that's true. That's true.
Well, Duke, what was your first time experiencing the Breakfast Club?
I do remember this. It's not going to make a lot of people happy, but so as I mentioned in my written write-up, Breakfast Club, I hadn't seen it well into my high school days. And one of my classmates, of the 15, was shocked that I hadn't seen it. And she literally wrote down her Netflix login and password and was like, "You have to watch this tonight." I didn't. And I eventually bought the movie and I watched it on a laptop of all things, because this was a one TV household. So if anyone else was using the TV and didn't want to watch a movie, I had to pop the DVD into the laptop disc player. So
Nice.
I'm pretty sure I watched it on my laptop on the floor of my bedroom, and yeah, just loved it. And that's pretty much the story. That's my little Breakfast Club memory.
I love it.
Short and sweet.
And what does it mean to you now? Do you have like a different sort of reaction to it? Does it feel the same as when you first watched it?
Having watched it last night for the first time and had to been at least 3 years, I know it was almost nostalgic in the sense that I kept thinking back to my high school days, and that got me thinking, like, man, is this how it's gonna be looking? If you revisit more of these 80s or teen movies, I'm losing the youth attachment to it of what it means to actually be that age, and now it's almost, I'm looking back on it in a nostalgic way, thinking, oh man, remember, because I was thinking, oh, remember this and all this stuff that we did in high school. And so yeah, I don't know, it's got a little nostalgic, gets me all almost happy sad in a way.
A little bittersweet.
Yeah.
Can I cut in for a second to ask? And I meant to ask this in the beginning. How old are you guys?
Oh, I am almost 30.
And Raph, you're like 12, right?
Yeah, I'm 12.
Raph's just
I'm
over
almost
30.
15.
Like the number of students in Duke's graduating
Yeah.
class.
Yeah, exactly. Somewhere between 12 and 15. No, I'm 32. So
Okay.
definitely lived in a post Breakfast Club world. RJ, I know why you're asking the question, and even though I'm only a few years older than Duke, I had a similar reaction to being in high school and borrowing someone else's Netflix login.
It is
Yeah.
interesting how I don't know about you, Raph, because 4 years, especially in that, the late 2000s, early 2010s, can be a big difference now. But I kind of grew up with the technology, like I kind of, like, at least my class grew with the cell phone, like it's not like we haven't missed a step, we're older. My parents, it's even, emails and smartphones, there was a bit of a learning curve where, we just kind of grew with it. There was nothing, I had, AOL or dial up, I kind of, we're on the cusp of the original technology, the internet, dial up, Wi-Fi, pre-smartphones. So it's like we've kind of lived it all. That's unrelated to Breakfast Club, but I don't know. I thought maybe we were going on a tangent where, like, how does the Breakfast Club, with different decades? Because you would have a late two. I was really trying not to get that on me today, but oh well. Anyway, Breakfast Club. It each decade can attach themselves to it.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. It is. I mean, music and fashion aside, it is one of those that is fairly timeless in the themes and even I mean, the characters and what they represent. And I can't remember. I think I was watching an interview with Molly Ringwald that she did talking about the Breakfast Club, and she was saying that several years after the movie came out, she had met a girl who, like, a younger girl, and that the girl was telling her that that she loved the movie, and she felt like it was for her generation, and Molly Ringwald was like, "You're not. Oh, this was my generation." It's kind of, I guess it's kind of always been that way. I mean, we're how many years since this movie came out? Almost. Oh God, almost
Almost
40.
40
almost
Yeah,
40.
next year.
it's almost
Yeah.
40
So
years old.
that is several generations to have grown up with this in their movie history. So
I do think this movie is probably, going off your Molly Ringwald comment, I think it almost will begin to mean more to the younger generations, just in the sense that, especially when they're talking about pressures, all this pressure on them. Now you have the internet, you have social media, you have all these teenagers with TikTok and having these big TikTok careers. And then there's going to be a pressure, I think, to be somebody a lot sooner. And just, if everything's online, you don't have clicks. Like, I don't know if are clicks even going to be a thing in 10 years, because nobody hangs out with their friends. It seems like everybody's online playing video games. So I do think
I
the
thought you were talking
Breakfast
about
Club.
online clicks.
Oh no. Well, I guess there will
Like
be. I guess
clicks views, yeah.
everything's gonna move online probably. But
It's going to
just, I
move from
think.
clicks to clicks, right?
Yeah,
oh
I think
yeah,
it's gonna mean something, because people will be able to relate to what they're feeling, because maybe they won't have people to talk to except for online. So there will be that disconnect, I think, between different cliques and so.
Yeah, well, I think the thing that you guys are talking about is sort of what is simultaneously so simple and revolutionary about this movie is that sort of up until the 80s, like early 80s, mid 80s, so this comes out in 85, right? Up until this point, most high school movies and teenage characters within movies were like fairly one note in how they were portrayed. Like, it's a lot of just, they're scoundrels, they're looking to party, it's guys looking to get laid, it's girls who are essentially like only there to lay with said guys. There's really like nothing else to teenage characters. And then this movie comes along and it's like, okay, here's a wild idea. What if we allowed teenage characters actual emotional depth? Because everyone knows that, teenage people do have emotions, they do have feelings, they have thoughts, they have fears, anxieties, all of that stuff. And there just weren't a lot of movies that spoke directly to those feelings of teens and really were portraying those emotions, anxieties, whatever it may be, from the teenage perspective. Like, I think one thing about movies about teenagers, even still to this day, is a lot of times it's like we're projecting adult sensibilities onto teenage characters. Whereas I think what this movie does is it really just is an expression for teenagers and like all of the angst that they feel. So again, like, no matter how much times change, no matter how much the technology changes, no matter how different your high school experience is, whether there's 15 kids in your class or 2,000 kids in your class, it doesn't matter if you're in a predominantly wealthy neighborhood and a poorer neighborhood where your high school is. It doesn't matter if there's a lot of Hispanic kids, a lot of black kids, a lot of, Irish kids. Like, all teenagers have that same sort of angst within them. And I feel like this movie taps into that in a really special way, in a way that wasn't done before. And it has been done since, but this one sort of like set the blueprint.
I agree. No, it's set the blueprint, and I think it hasn't been topped really. Just jumping on your changes, whatever all you said about anxieties and all that. I'll quickly mention this event. This, I feel, the Breakfast Club sums up a lot better. It was some event where, to bring everybody together, somebody came in and they did all these exercises, like, who has a divorced parent, and everybody raises their hand, and then you get these circles we had. It was basically this event like the Breakfast Club where you learn that everybody has similar problems. Now, the goal, of course, was that this will change everybody. And for one day, everybody was nicer to everybody. And then everybody went back to their cliques. Everybody went back to kind of, making fun of each other's groups. And
You're
I'm
going to say
watching
someone's
this.
name. You're going to say one kid's name. You're going to say everyone went back to making fun of.
No, there were people, but no. And then I'm watching Breakfast Club last night, and I'm thinking, I'm getting nostalgic. I'm thinking about that, and I'm watching. I'm like, man, if it wasn't for the swears and maybe some of the outdated language, but even the marijuana use, the school board would never allow that. You could get everybody in, and it wouldn't cost you thousands of dollars to bring these people in. You could just play the Breakfast Club, and then you would see that, oh, you know what? The nerd has pressure, but also the school jock has pressure because his dad's beating him, and the basket case has this, and the princess also thinks that, she knows everybody thinks she's too good for them. It just sums up high school life and how you think you're alone in this world, but you're not, a lot better than any guest speaker that the school boards will pay thousands of dollars for to bring in. No. Breakfast Club is just cheaper, way better, and it's just a good movie too. So you get like multiple benefits from watching it.
That definitely sounds like it would have been a better idea.
100%.
You can't go wrong.
And
you probably would have had to spend a couple $100 on popcorn, but that's it.
That's a lot of popcorn.
Well,
it's only 15 kids.
I was thinking it was the whole school. So it was 300 kids, but
whoa.
And the staff partook as well, which looking back is even more awkward because some people are crying, professing their hearts out. Everybody's getting deep and vulnerable. And then I look back and I'm like, oh, that just gives me the heebie-jeebies now thinking that we did that.
Sounds awful.
Breakfast Club would have been a much better idea.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds really awful.
Welcome to small town Canada.
Duke, it's funny that you say that because my senior year of high school, I took a pseudo film class. I think it was called Film in the Narrative Form, which is really just, it was just film. It was just like we watched films instead of reading books for English class, which was pretty rad. But one of the movies, we had different sections of the class. Like one section was all about, teaching us about screenwriting and stuff. And then one, because we were in high school, one of the sections was high school movies. And one of the movies that we watched was The Breakfast Club. And I don't think that my teacher, we didn't necessarily talk about it in terms of hey, what cliques are you guys in? And how can we sort of get all of you people from different backgrounds to be more simpatico? It just sort of, my high school was, because it was so big and because it was in such a diverse area of both socioeconomic status, ethnicity, religion, all of that stuff, there were already all of these kids in this class that come from wildly different backgrounds. But because our teacher was so cool, we were all sort of really cool with each other, and everyone in the class had a good rapport with one another. So we watched that movie, and I'll never forget this. He goes to play the DVD and he says, "All right, folks, welcome to the wonderful world of white people." And then at the end, he was like, even though the wise janitor character, which is usually reserved for a black guy, still a white dude. But either way, all that's to say that I think because, again, I went to high school in a post Breakfast Club world, and two, because because the school was so big, we were already sort of forced to like reckon with these differences and how we're like not all that dissimilar. We never really had the need to have a guest speaker with popcorn come in to ask us about our divorced parents or whatever. Like we literally just did the
It
thing
was very weird.
where we watched The Breakfast Club and like everyone was cool, you know?
I mean, I should say before everybody thinks small town's weird, we did get cooler guest speakers that were just fun guest speakers. You know, they would come in and just talk about their life experiences. You know, it wasn't
But
just
still
always
no popcorn.
no popcorn. No.
I'm sorry.
Sad. Fun fact about that janitor. Oh, here's my fun Easter egg. At the beginning of the film, did you guys notice when it's going through the school, there's the man of the year, and the janitor was man of the year for 1969. So he peaked in high school.
Yeah. I didn't notice that until my last rewatch.
Okay.
Because I have the DVD, and that's like, I think in the DVD menu, it's made super obvious that man of the year is the janitor.
My Blu-ray had like a watch movie, and then there was watch movie with trivia, and I almost clicked that trivia, and I wonder if that would have been on there.
Yeah, that would have been so much fun.
Next time,
for
baby.
For the next episode. Okay, so do we want to like? I feel like we've talked a little bit about the different characters and the cliques that they represent. Let's spend a little bit more time here because I feel like we haven't totally dove all the way into this. I know that's a made-up word.
Bender needs some attention.
All right, Duke, give us all of your thoughts on Bender.
First, I need to know: am I crazy, or does Judd Nelson, young Judd Nelson at least, look like young Robert Downey Jr.? Do you see the similarity? I couldn't shake that watching it last night. How much? And he acts kind of like a young, and even now Robert Downey Jr. Was I the only one who picked up on that?
Yes, but I could have seen Downey Jr. in that role. 100%.
I could also. Bender, though, I think is the MVP. He is the most important character in The Breakfast Club. He's really, I don't know, it's like just Judd Nelson's given one hell of a performance.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like he's just, you know, where it takes the other four, almost the whole movie to kind of pick up on their similarities and how they're all not. I feel like Bender, he gets it. He's off the bat. He kind of knows, you know, he's putting on a show. So maybe that's why he kind of knows what's up, and that, oh, you know, just because you're this doesn't mean you can't also be that. He also learns, but I feel like he was a couple steps ahead of everybody else at the beginning of the movie.
I don't know if I would necessarily say that I saw that, but he is definitely the catalyst for the changes that happen amongst the group, in good ways and bad ways. In some ways, just him being a jerk. I think so. Moments where he's being a very serious jerk push the group to kind of like they kind of rally together because it is aimed at all of them at different points. But also, he's just he's charismatic, you know, like he is. And I definitely knew people like that in high school, not necessarily, you know, like criminal, quote unquote, but, you know, people that were kind of like a class clown, people that got in trouble a lot, but they were charismatic. They could work a room. People were drawn to them. And I think that just that being part of his personality helps kind of pull it out of the other characters.
He also kind of gives like a peek behind the curtain of the typical bully character where, you know, he's the criminal, he's the one who's acting out, he's a class clown. But so much of that is because his home life is horrendous. Like it's horrific what he has to go home to. And of course he's going to then act out in school and, you know, get detention over and over again. He might smoke a little bit of pot, but, you know, you can tell that he's like a pretty bright guy. He just doesn't really have the sort of direction that he needs at home. And then you take the flip side of that with, Brian and Andrew, and they maybe have a little bit too much direction from home, where their parents are trying to mold them into these people that might not necessarily be the versions of themselves that they want to be. And I think a lot of times, I don't want to speak ill of people's parenting styles because I've never been a parent, but I think society as a whole has placed like far too much pressure on young people in ways that's really unfair to them. And again, like, you can be from any sort of background and you can have any kind of pressure put on you. Duke, like you were saying, the pressure could be being a TikTok star or like being cool on Instagram. And that's like not good for the psyche of a 16, 17, 18-year-old person. So like both, like all those characters sort of represent like two opposite ends of the same kind of spectrum.
I wrote down in my notes, one, just that whole hallway chase is great scene in the movie, but also Nelson, I guess Bender actually, sacrificing himself so the rest don't get in trouble, I think also just says a lot about his character, in the sense that, he puts on this face, but it's like, oh, now we're all screwed or something. He's like, no, just me. Then he just starts shouting and running away. It's like, oh, gets ya.
Okay. But can we talk about that scene, because I want to know, what is the layout of this school?
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I thought that it's like Scooby-Doo, when they're all running through the doors. It's like, what is this layout? They go up, they go down.
Is this a labyrinth? What is this? Like, yeah.
And then right when they like run past and into this door, then the principal walks out from like a different hallway, which if he was looking straight ahead, he would have saw them run right past. Yeah. Still a great scene though.
Yes, an excellent scene. And I agree. I think that him sacrificing himself in that moment is kind of a turning point. Where, they see a little bit of the, good side of him, the little bit of heart, and then helps to break the ice.
Out of everyone in the Breakfast Club, do you think that Bender has the most love for the other members, or do you think it might be someone else who genuinely cares about the other people within the Breakfast Club
Brian.
as individuals? Oh, all right, RJ, go on with that. Why is it Brian?
Well, I mean, I think that he demonstrates it pretty clearly in their, therapy session scene towards the end, when he asks, what's going to happen on Monday, and tells all of them, that he would not be a jerk to them and ignore them on Monday, and still acknowledge that the bond and friendship that they had formed during their time in detention together. And he's got peacekeeper vibe going on from the very beginning, trying to chill tensions out. But I think that and some of this is the acting, of course. Michael Anthony Hall, is that?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is wonderful. He does an awesome job of imbuing him with, with a kind heart, and just like the way he speaks, the softness of his tone. It seems to be just kind of in his nature, but says it well enough on his own that he would never, when Claire is talking about how, they would not be friends again on Monday, and he says, I would never do that to any of you. I think he said something like, I consider each and every one of you a friend.
Oh man.
Yeah, Brian says that. I think you're right in that Brian has the most love for the club, but I think Bender, as he points out, is the most realistic, because then Bender brings it back and says, oh, come on, Claire. Or come on, Andrew. If Brian came up to you, you'd be nice. And then as soon as he leaves, you'd make fun of him. I think Bender, in the sense, he wishes the Breakfast Club would continue this friendship, but he knows, as he points out, what's actually going to happen on Monday. And that this is just a temporary thing. A little kumbaya session, then it's all back to normal on Monday.
That might be the most heartbreaking moment of the movie for me, when when they admit to Brian that they, wouldn't say hi to him on Monday after all of this. I'm going to ask a kind of intense question, and we don't necessarily have to go into this if we don't want to, but sort of with that Brian moment, do we think that this movie is in a way sort of getting at the fact that outside of societal structures, like our humanity sort of can shine through, but as long as we have those structures in place, whether it be, cliques at high school or whatever else it may be, we're just it's always going to limit us in terms of um how much our humanity can like connect us no matter what our backgrounds are. Is that too deep of a reading for the Breakfast Club, or do you
Are,
guys
are
think
you
that
are you
there's anything to
saying
that?
are you saying our differences will always overpower our similarities? Is that what you're?
No, because I think when they're in detention and they talk through all of their differences and realize that maybe there are more similarities, like they form these friendships and these bonds despite their differences, but it's really just the societal structure of like high school cliques that keeps them apart that next
Yeah.
Monday. There's nothing else. It's not because they dislike each other as people. It's not because they don't like know each other as people. It's simply because they have to like uphold these cliques and the structure that it has within like the popularity hierarchy of a high school setting.
Yeah.
I think it's too deep of a read, but I think that it's the high school dynamic is just a microcosm for what happens as we get older because every place I've ever been, every job I've ever had, every any type of organization, there's always cliques. There are always humans are gonna break off into little groups. It's got to be some kind of evolutionary survival thing. I don't know, but
It.
yeah, it
Yeah.
it,
It
it,
is
it certainly
interesting.
did not end in high school.
No, it's interesting watching The Breakfast Club. 40 years later after its release, and kind of thinking like it's wild how many films we've got that kind of tackles this premise. High School Musicals come to mind. Stick to the status quo.
Hmm.
Don't be shaking up. And how like it hasn't really. We have all these movies. Where it's like look at how similar we are. We don't have to be different, and yet we just continue on. Nothing really changes. It'd be nice, if Brian and Andrew could hang out. And honestly, that was kind of what it was like in a small town. You did talk, maybe you weren't close friends with, the nerd or the jock, but you could chat with him, and it wouldn't be a big deal. But I
Yeah,
could, I can definitely see, yeah, it's just weird how it's almost like again, it's like almost that anxiety is coming in. Like,
I don't think it's like differences between them as people. I think it's the man, it's the system that is imposing these separations on them that they otherwise wouldn't adhere to
well, I
themselves.
would agree to that then, yeah.
Like it's shown when all that stuff is stripped away, when it's just the five of them sitting in an empty library, it's fine. Yes, there are ups and downs of any sort of like human relationship, but besides that, they grow really meaningful relationships with each other.
Yeah, this
They're
is something
also,
I. No, go ahead, RJ.
I think that there's something to be said for the fact that being in this situation alone together and given a common enemy in the principal who Paul Gleason, I think,
Hmm.
I thought you were calling
who
him
is
Principal Poophead.
yes, who is the best of the 80s
I was
bad,
gonna say greatest '80s principal, hands down.
yes, but they have a common enemy, a common problem of being stuck there and being bored to give a foundation for that. And, given the same circumstances with another group of kids, would they, could that happen? If these same kids were put together in some other setting, with no antagonist, then
Hmm.
is the same thing going to happen?
Interesting. Well,
I don't know.
okay, I'll ask this question then. So we all agree Principal Poophead is one of the best movie villains of all time. Absolutely despicable
Absolutely. Yeah.
as a person. But so much of the second half of the movie, I want to say, like final third of the movie, is them connecting and bonding sort of outside of Principal Poophead. It's just them talking about what landed them in detention, their relationships or lack thereof with their parents, all of that stuff. And it just turns into a group therapy session where, well, so I guess then the question is like, does the common enemy in Principal Poophead lead them to having these, these like therapy sessions where they're all talking about their problems and how they all might be, connected or different or, whatever it may be.
It's interesting. I don't know if the principal is necessarily the bad guy, because even if you remove him from the movie and it's just anybody could have just made them sit in that library. It's almost boredom is what brings together, because he antagonizes them a bit, pushes Bender, but it is them being stuck in that space together and letting time tick away, and then they slowly, are forced to kind of interact together. So yeah, the
He's kind of just like
principal's
an avatar
yeah,
for the
he's
quote
like
unquote
the
man.
inciting incident almost. He's getting them.
Yeah.
Where today everyone would you'd have to confiscate their cell phones first, or otherwise there'd be no opening up. They'd all just be on their cell phones in the corner.
More or less boring than Allison's I just didn't have anything better to do today reason for being in detention.
But is that the truth? Because she's a compulsive liar.
She is.
That's like one of the
I don't
greatest movie
know.
mysteries.
Yes. I think that she's telling the truth in that one.
I I want to, but then also I
What
was
do you
like,
think
oh
she
yeah,
tells her
and then I was like, oh,
parents?
but she just said she's a compulsive liar.
Well, so she says that
She's definitely a
her parents
basket
wrote her,
case.
right? Yeah.
Not wrong about that. It's oh man, that sandwich she makes is repulsive.
That sandwich always looked intriguing to me.
No, too much
Like,
but like there's
what?
just like gobs of butter on it. No, thank you.
So do you think she tells her parents that she got detention and her parents are so aloof that they don't even ask why and they're just like whatever, we'll drop you off? Or do you think she like made up some reason? She's like, yeah, I was like smoking weed in the
Oh, I don't think she made a
bathroom or
reason. No,
something. You think she just said like, I got detention, drop
I
me
got
off?
detention. But talking about do you say aloof parents? I think it's weird when everybody's leaving, how the parents are pulling up and they're all making out pretty much. I'm watching that last night. I was like, oh, here comes, like, what would I think if I'm picking my kid up from detention? And there she is kissing Bender, And then it's like, oh, what? And then I see her also give him one of the diamond earrings I got her for Christmas. It's an interesting ending, but it
I do
works.
have two questions on two things that were brought up, and I feel like these two things do tell us a lot about the characters in really cool ways. One is the lunch, like all of their lunches that they eat
Mm-hmm.
or don't eat are just like a really good insight into who they all are as characters. And then the other thing is the drop off with their parents and just like the intro of all of the characters and how they all arrive to detention also gives us a lot of great insight. So RJ, what do you think about the lunch scene and the drop off scene in terms of like how it's building and developing and introducing these characters?
I will say that it's not until the watching it for podcast, and that's the first time I've seen it in probably a few years, that I've truly appreciated Andrew's lunch, because it's so hard to get your back rows in. And if you're trying to, eat certain amounts of protein and carbs for, for him for sports reasons, then yeah, the struggle is real. And it is a very impressive spread of food.
Yeah, that's quite the
The
lunch spread
sand,
that he's got.
yeah. I loved the little moment between Claire and Bender where he is just shocked and horrified by her eating the sushi, though. It's funny because he's kind of such a hard ass up until that point, and in that moment he's just like confused and taken aback and like doesn't know how to address the fact that she's eating raw fish, and that is clearly,
Rightfully so.
yeah.
Duke, what do you make of the
Oh,
drop off scene and lunch scene?
the drop off scene. I mean, yeah, perfect setup. I mean, you got the mom reaming Brian. You got the dad being like, "Hey, everybody has fun," but you kind of get their different parental styles, which they then expand on. Bender, of course, nobody's dropping him off. He has to show up as himself. Basket case just kind of gets out, So yeah, it's a nice setup. And then yeah, the lunches, Bender's always giving Brian a hard time with the what is this, milk? Soup. Oh, okay, nice. You dive in, yeah, like RJ said with the sushi because Claire's rich and all that, and the basket case just has kind of whatever. Seems like she packed her own lunch, maybe except for the sandwich, which she
Mm-hmm.
then I don't know what that meat was that she threw off, but it was not appealing.
Some sort of bologna.
Yeah, I was
But
gonna
it's
say.
like got like peppers in there or something. I don't know. There's some green stuff. I don't know. I was not privy to that kind of meat at my household. My lunch was mostly tomato and lettuce sandwiches. Yeah, I was a simple boy.
Yeah, I feel like the most telling in the drop off scene is the fact that there's no interaction between Allison and her parents that we see. So we're just like it's like a really cheeky move after you have the interaction with Claire and her dad, the interaction of Andrew and his dad, the interaction between Brian and his mom. Bender showing up solo, we get it. His parents are totally out of the picture. But then Allison, it's like, okay, her parents are around enough to drop her off, which is maybe why she's not a criminal like Bender, but there's not even any sort of like talk between the two of them when she gets dropped off at detention. So like maybe that's why she's a total basket case and maybe is dealing with all kinds of mental health, teenage anxiety stuff that like no one can put a finger on. I just feel like it's a really subtle move by John Hughes, but it does go like a super long way in terms of understanding her character, which brings me to the next question. And it's kind of criminal that we've gone about an hour into this discussion and we haven't really discussed
John
the
Hughes.
the man behind all of this, John Hughes. So Duke, what do you make of John Hughes as both writer and director, and then just sort of figure within film history and the sort of teen comedies and teen dramas more so that he made so popular throughout the 80s?
That is a loaded question. Let me try to break that down. I mean,
You got
John
this.
Hughes, has there ever been an adult male who is better at writing about teenagers? I don't know. He can just tap into his youth, it seems, and just write such relatable characters and his dialogue. I mean, this and then Ferris Bueller kind of, I always compare them the same, mostly because apparently, he could write a script in like 6 days. It's impressive. But also filming wise, he has all the characters in the same clothing, which this and Ferris Bueller, you will notice this in. And then I guess he did that so that he could easily move scenes around. So if he wanted to say, because, even watching this, I always thought they got high, then they danced, then they had a big talk, but they got high. I think way later in the movie is when they danced and had that. So I don't know if that was part of that because he does come out of the record room, it looks like, but I guess that just gave him flexibility to shift stuff around at will because he didn't have to worry too much about continuity. And even if you watch The Breakfast Club, you'll see, they have their jacket off, but they can put it back on in between scenes. It doesn't really matter. So I always thought that was just a cool detail of his that I don't think many directors maybe look for. I mean, the guy had an impressive run. I mean, if we're talking about 80s, not actors, but 80s filmmakers or writers, Spielberg's got to be up there. But then I'd almost say Hughes is like one, or, maybe Spielberg in terms of just 80s movies overall. But then Hughes, if you're going to go down into the teen genre, like 16 Candles was his directorial debut. He's got Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller, Pretty in Pink. He wrote Some Kind of Wonderful. And then he's just going on, he didn't do Home Alone, did he? Did he write that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he just tapped into, I don't know, whatever he was drinking, I want some, because he just got teenagers in a way that I don't think very few writers, I think, at least even in the 80s and beyond, have really been able to recapture. Like there's a reason we're talking about The Breakfast Club, 40 years later, and, it still holds up, and it's one of these movies that never needs to be remade. It's just, it captures something that, yeah, it's hard to really put into words, but he somehow did it. And yeah.
Yeah. RJ, what about you? What do you, Gone Too Soon. What an absolute legend. But RJ, what do you think about Hughes, his run, his direction, his treatment of teens, all that stuff?
I think, the name John Hughes is synonymous with being a teenager in the 80s. Like that is his movies are what you think of when you think of like what was it to be a teen in that era. And I watched some snippets of interviews with the cast, and just from the way they talk about him, he seems like he was very beloved by them, and that he worked very closely with everyone and let them. I specifically heard them mention several different times how he would they would rehearse, and then they would they would start a scene, and he would just let it go, and just let it keep going, and letting them just do do their thing, and capturing as much as he could, and use what he decided to use, I guess. But I think that, especially compared to the generations of film and TV teen media that came afterwards, where I think Duke mentioned this earlier, but they everyone's so much more, they're just like shorter adults. They don't act and talk like teenagers anymore. I'm looking at you, Dawson's Creek, like, seriously, things like that. John Hughes movies, the teenagers act like teenagers. They talk like teenagers. They do teenagery things, like the, dancing on the banister, not banister, whatever the heck that was.
The railing.
In the railing, there we go.
Or banister, I think that would work.
It's repeatedly calling the guys the Sporto. We didn't call anybody Sporto at my high school, but we had terms like that, that you referred to certain groups of people. And so I think that I don't know how you get to that point. Did he just not mature out of having the teen brain? Was he just particularly adept at relating to them?
Yeah.
Was it such a significant time in his life that it stuck that well? I don't know, but
I feel like it's got to be a relating thing, because it doesn't, like, the movies don't come across as immature the way that we would think of a movie that is made by a teen, like a way that a movie made by a teen would be. There's like this not weird, but there's this level of respect that he has for the teenage experience that most adult filmmakers don't have, while also, again, like I said, never dipping into the sort of immaturities of a teenager in a way that really makes his movies, I think, legible for both teenage audiences and super relatable, obviously, for teenage audiences, but also understandable for adult audiences. it's hard to know if like part of the reason why I love The Breakfast Club still now is because it reminds me of a particular time in my life when I was going through these kinds of things, but it does also feel like a movie that as an adult someone can enjoy on its own just for like being a great movie.
Yes, I certainly enjoy it still as an adult. And I think you were hitting on something there as well. He doesn't talk down to that age group with his films, but he doesn't
Mhm.
talk up to them either. It's not,
Yeah.
but there is certainly a level of saying, hey, this is, we know, like, you're all more complicated than just being a stereotype. But especially in The Breakfast Club, but in I think in all of his other kind of teen 80s movies as well.
Yeah. It's like
He
this
allows
level
the
of
characters to have depth without having to also give them like some weird level of maturity that they wouldn't really have.
it's just like this simple level of, hey, I see you. Like that's it, you know? People say that a lot in 21st century whatever culture society, but that's really all that he's doing with teens in this movie. He's just saying, I see you, I hear your frustrations, and I can give you voice to like speak it out to the masses. And he does it in the form of The Breakfast Club. But I do want to go back to one thing that Duke brought up before, which I think is another sort of just like there's so many like so much subtle genius to this movie, and I think one of the things that really highlights that is the single location and really just like making this a bottle episode of TV or a chamber um, story, and it all takes place in the same day. It pretty much takes place in like one location, one central location where they like maybe venture out a little bit out of the library. But Duke, what do you make of how do you think that the single day structure, the single location like adds to this particular story?
Well, first, that's a really nice school library. Didn't
Yeah.
have that.
It's like a
Didn't have that.
college
And that's
library.
also the same school I guess he used for exterior shots on Ferris Bueller. So he must have some
Mhm.
relationship with that school. Single location, single day. I mean, from the get go, you know that this has to end. You know, regardless of, as they talk about, on Monday we're not going to be friends anymore. You know that whatever happens, it's over. The single location, I think, again, gave him freedom with the editing. But I mean, yeah, I guess it's funny you mentioned that because I was thinking like if they remade this now as a TV show, they'd be doing flashbacks to like how they all got tickets to detention. So the
Yeah.
single location, it's just it's there. You know, you kind of just learn as you go. It's really I'm trying to think like how could you make this not be set in just that one location, and
Mhm.
it's just you don't need to be. I think that's also an issue with maybe movies today. It's like they just don't know how to just set things in one location, put the characters in, and just figure out a way to just make that work. And even
Yeah.
like the little dynamics, like not having the principal in the same room is also kind of an interesting choice because there's no reason he couldn't, except the principal just doesn't want to have to spend 9 hours with them. So he wants to be
Yeah.
in his office across. So, and then even then, he finds a way to kind of like almost make it two locations by getting that door closed. So
Mhm.
there is some interesting magic Hughes is writing in there to kind of make one location feel like multiple locations.
Yeah.
Don't know if that's what you
Well,
wanted me to answer, but that's
no,
all I
no.
got.
That's an absolutely wonderful answer. RJ, with that, something that Duke brought up, the res- restraint that he shows in not showing any flashbacks of how the Breakfast Club got to detention. Like, what do you make of that? Do you think that this movie would have benefited from those flashbacks, or do you think it's perfect as is?
No, I think that it is better without it. I think keeping you in the present with them, in this, like, mostly in the library the whole time, you get the feeling of, this day that's just dragging on.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of helps to keep, as a viewer, it helped to keep me in that experience with them. Um, and I think that flashbacks would have been, really unnecessary exposition, maybe. Um,
Yeah, it works for
I
some
don't,
movies. Like it makes sense
It
in some
yeah,
movies, but I
it's
think
yeah,
for what you're
interesting.
but
saying,
the the context that we get from them telling their story is, I think, better than seeing the events happening, because what
you
we
get the
need to
emotion
know
of them
what
reminiscing.
the thing that happened. Yeah, like, we don't need to know what the thing that actually, the scene. We need to know what they feel about
Mm,
what
Yeah,
happened, why
no,
they're there, and that's what they're bringing to this moment.
definitely. Like, I think I don't know if this is a movie term too, but I know in writing, it's always show, don't tell. Like if you can just like actually write instead of like exposition, if you can just
hmm
show that instead. Where here it's almost the opposite. The telling is better than if they would have just shown, how they all got detention, whether it was brief
Yeah.
flashbacks or it's more important to have them together telling their stories in that kind of I think you referred to it, Raf, as like a therapy session in your article.
Yeah, I
A
mean, it
joint
feels like a
therapy
group therapy
session.
session,
Group
you
therapy
know?
session, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, RJ, I mean, that's such a good point about just like you need if you go to a flashback, you lose all of the emotion in that room. And then when you go back to it, when you go back to that room, it's just not going to hit the same. Like, okay, we saw Andrew beat up another guy. Cool. How does he feel about that? I don't know. Like the whole movie is about going on this emotional journey with them. Like as a viewer, you are essentially the sixth member of the Breakfast Club. You're going through it in as close to real time as possible. Absolutely wonderful
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, John Hughes obviously got his start as a writer, and he's probably most of his work is known for the writing aspect. I think in this movie in particular, he's doing a lot of really great directing, but his bread and butter is writing, and he wrote the holy heck out of the script.
So good.
So good. Well, Duke RJ, I don't really have much
Oh,
else, but
I
yeah,
got
what else?
I got some
Let's
what ifs if you'll humor me.
yeah, who doesn't love a what if?
I also had a couple more things that I
Oh, okay. All
just
right, before we get
wrote.
into Duke's what ifs,
Yeah,
RJ,
yeah,
what were
RJ.
your
Take it
what
away.
are your real notes that you have for us
Um,
on the movie?
so the scenes between the principal and the janitor when they're sitting and talking, I think that's a really, as for one of the scenes where we cut away from them and what they're doing, it's a really nice juxtaposition. It does not make you like the principal anymore at all. Makes you like the janitor more, I think. He seems like an okay guy.
hmm
But the scene, the principal, he's talking about how it's a kids these days speech, and I think we are getting a lot of that today,
hmm
and I don't know, I don't think either of you have kids, right? Or Duke,
No.
do you have kids?
Not the
Okay.
moment.
Okay. So that is as persuasive today as it was in sitting with the principal and the janitor 40 years ago. That it's not us, it's the kids. The kids are
hmm
different than they were when I was younger.
Mm.
This generation is worse. They don't care. They're not, disrespectful and whatever other crap he was saying. But I just think it's I had forgotten about that scene
Hmm.
And when I listened to it, I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm reading a Facebook post right now, you know, that I see at least once a week, somebody posting something that, and I'm not saying that that's wrong, and I would not dismiss the experience of teachers. I could not be a teacher, but
Yeah. Oof.
and every generation is different.
It
We
Hmm.
just are. And is it better or worse? I guess it depends on your perspective. And the janitor, I think, does a good job of giving some perspective.
He's sort of like a stand-in figure for Hughes himself, where he actually
Yeah.
he sees the students, he hears them, and again, I think RJ, sort of similar to what you're saying, as older people, I think we're oftentimes too quick to sort of belittle and trivialize the fears, anxieties, emotions of teenage people, of young people, because, they don't have it as hard as us because they don't have to work and they don't have to worry about bills and all of that stuff. But like, you know, their feelings and thoughts and frustrations still deserve levels of consideration. And like the only way that we can help them, whether it be as parents, as teachers, as aunts and uncles, whatever it may be, is to like actually listen to those issues that they're having and taking them seriously. And that's totally what this movie does. It doesn't just trivialize, well, oh, you got one bad grade in French class. Don't worry about that because in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't matter. Like, no, that matters a lot to Brian. And we should hear him out and how it's making him feel. And I think the janitor character is like totally a stand-in for Hughes in that regard. Duke, I don't know if you had any additional thoughts on what RJ was saying there.
um no, I don't know. Just that I think maybe it's more impressive that Hughes is able to tap into the teenage experience because it is kind of funny how as we get older, we kind of forget what it was like to be a teenager. Everybody always talks, you get that thing where the parents are like, oh, my day, or, they just are always just a hard ass on their kid. And we forget what it was like to be a teenager. And, I watched a different 80s movie, Rad, the other day, and the old guy just hated teenagers. And I was thinking, it's weird that you can hate teenagers when you were once a teenager. It's just, as you get older, I think you lose a bit of that, what it was like to actually be a teenager, as we see with the principal thinking, oh, these kids are different, when probably he was just a little shit disturber too, when he was in high school. So yeah, I think Hughes is just, the way that Hughes is able to write a teenager, yet is a full grown adult. I don't know. It's impressive.
Super impressive. RJ, were there other?
Yeah, and actually what y'all were just saying kind of brought something else to mind, and that is that I just now noticed this, that they don't try to fix each other's problems.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
they hold space for each other. They listen and share their experiences, but at no point is anyone like, here is, well, except for maybe Bender offering to, help Claire piss her parents off by dating. But otherwise, in general, this is a situation where I feel like if you get a group of adults together and they have these serious problems, it's almost like you almost can't help but trying to give advice or say, oh, you should do this. I would do this. What about,
Mhm.
but they don't do that.
Teenagers are a lot better at, I think, listening, where parents or adult figures always want to try to find a solution.
Yeah. I have found that is something with, my own kiddos, and even with myself. Sometimes you just need to sort your stuff out by talking about it and get it out, and you don't want someone to fix it. You just need ear. You just need somebody to listen, and that is enough to help.
Oh man, I really want to cut. I really want to undercut that really nice, thoughtful statement that you had by making a joke about podcasting, and that sometimes we don't need anyone to respond back to our thoughts about movies. We just need ears to listen to all of the ideas that we have about The Breakfast Club or whatever other movie
and
we're talking about.
5-star reviews to be left.
Yeah. Sorry, RJ. You had a really profound moment, a really thoughtful point, and I totally ruined it.
No, it's perfect. I was starting to feel uncomfortable with like, oh, this is serious insight. Thank you for, yeah, thanks for pulling it back up.
We can't be too serious. Okay, RJ, did you have any other thoughts, observations, notes before we do Duke's what ifs?
Yeah, let's get to Duke's what ifs.
These are casting what ifs, by the way.
All right, Duke. Before you go, wait 1 second. I got to give you a proper intro for your what ifs.
Ooh. All right, I'm going to do I got 3 what ifs. I'm going to do all 3, and then we can discuss whether this movie could have still been good. There's one I know would have been terrible. First, apparently John Hughes wanted Molly Ringwald to play the basket case, and she, I guess, was really sad about that and fought to play Claire. Emilio Estevez was actually cast as John Bender, but then they had a harder time casting for Andrew, so Emilio Estevez got put in that role instead. And then finally, Rick Moranis was apparently cast as the janitor, but he was going to do like a stereotypical Russian kind of with the gold tooth and a big keychain. And I think he got fired before filming rolled, it seems. So he got replaced. So those are my 3 casting what ifs. Could this movie still have worked? Rick Moranis, I think, would have took the movie out. He would have. It's like a serious comedy, and I think he would have been too comedic. But the other 2, I don't know. You don't see Ringwald playing the basket case, at least in Hughes movies. But Estevez as Bender, I could see.
Should have been Charlie Sheen as Bender.
Maybe that's what. And when Ferris Bueller, that's when they were like, you know what, Estevez is busy, but his brother could. Yeah, his brother's
great for this. Yeah.
And then Charlie Sheen just played that role for the rest of his life. What?
Yeah, got stuck. I think. Wow. So actually, Rick Moranis as the janitor, I think that would have been okay.
But as he's going to do a thick Russian accent.
Well, okay, so not as a thick Russian accent, maybe, but so okay. Have y'all seen L.A. Story?
No.
Steve Martin movie. Okay. Oh my God. Okay. Wow. You guys. So, L.A. Story movie with Steve Martin, and in it, he is walking through a cemetery with the woman that he likes, and they come across an open grave, and Rick Moranis he is the grave digger, and he is in this grave, and he does a little, I think it's a little bit of Shakespeare that he quotes, and it's a fun little scene, but not overly comedic. And as soon as you said that, that was what I thought of. I could have pictured him. He's got like kind of a Cockney accent.
Okay, well, I can see Rick Moranis doing a good job as a janitor, but not in the way that the history books say he was going to portray it.
Yeah, that I think would have been history books. That would have been less, I think, of a good direction.
I don't know about Ringwald because I just haven't seen her in anything where she's not kind of playing the John Hughes dream girl.
Yeah.
I mean, 16 Candles, she's not as popular, but she's not a basket case either. So I don't know. Ali Sheedy just does, like, they all do such a good job in this role that it's hard to imagine others, except I think Robert Downey Jr. could have played Judd Nelson's role, but besides that.
Mm-hmm. I think Robert Downey Jr. could have played any of the roles. He could have been, the prom queen or the basket.
I guess this is a movie that it's not gender specific. Like you could have had the basket case be a boy, and you could have had the nerd been a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And their experiences are very gender neutral too. You know, the pressure for good grades, the pressure to please your parents, and all that. So yeah.
Well, that's why this movie, again, like that's why it translates across time, across backgrounds, like the universality of the problems. It's not gendered. It's not race based. It's just like, okay, my parents want me to get good grades. That's really tough. I don't have a good relationship with my parents, so I act out in school. I don't have a good relationship with my parents, so I, um, go to detention when I don't need to. The only one that's really like based on a background is Claire. Like not all of us can relate to having rich parents, but a lot of people can relate to parents who don't like each other. Like that's a big part of her character is that
Yeah, they're divorced, I think, aren't they?
I don't know if they're divorced or
Well,
if they just
it's something like, "Are
they
you
fight a
grounded
lot.
after this?" And he said, "My mom says yes, but my dad says I should just blow her off and go to go to him or something like that." So it gives the illusion that I think they're like living in different houses.
Got it. I just thought that they were fighting,
No,
and
I think
like
that
always, like they would like pit her, or they would use her to like get at the other
Yeah,
one.
there's nothing but just that one bit of dialogue. RJ, I know you want to chime in, so maybe do you have the clarification?
Yeah, I think that when she in that little
Clarification.
moment of
We need the rim shot.
she says something about not wanting to give them another reason to fight because I don't remember the exact line, but basically it seems like one little or anything could be the last straw before they get divorced.
Okay.
I
Or they're
if I
divorced and she just doesn't like when they fight. All right, I got one more what if, Raph. So hit me with that sound effect thing. Hughes wanted this movie to be called The Lunch Bunch. Then a friend or something told him that his detention when he was growing up was called The Breakfast Club. That's the title.
The Lunch Bunch
What
would have been
Lunch
so
Bunch?
bad.
It
that
doesn't
sounds like
sound
a
good.
segment on
I always
Sesame
thought that was
Street.
when people were pitching a sequel that it was going to be called The Lunch Bunch. I didn't know that Hughes, like The Lunch Bunch, I just don't. Like it's too rhymey. It's too cutesy, you know?
Yeah.
There's
Way
something
too
about
cutesy.
Breakfast Club that
a
has
kid's
a bit of
show.
edge.
Yeah, that's a kid's show name.
But of course, they do eat lunch in the movie, not breakfast. So I could see where maybe that's where he's getting lunch from.
Yeah,
But
but they show up at like 7 a.m.
I know it's early. They're committed.
Oof. Yeah. I mean, at least, like, I guess the good thing is they're out early.
I
And
guess
then
that's a
Andrew and
nice
Claire
clock
can
in
go
the
to that
movie
party.
too. They keep flashing back to.
Good clock.
That's
Clock
very
is what we're
clock.
saying. Nice clock.
Lunch. Clock. Yes.
I do have one final question from me. Would this movie have been as amazing as it is without the song?
Oh wow! How did we go this whole time without talking about the song?
Was this song written
Yeah.
for this movie? No.
I do
I
not
don't
believe
know.
so.
I'm going to
That's a
Google
great
it.
question.
Yeah.
But it is perfect, don't you?
Dun-dun-dun. What a
Album
great song!
The song was inspired by and used in the 1985 John Hughes. Well, that doesn't really answer much. Well, maybe.
RJ, what do you think? Do you think it? I mean,
Oh, it was.
still
It
would have
was
been as
written for
great.
the movie. It was written for the movie.
I think it is certainly a song that evokes a certain feeling when you hear it. If you have seen this movie at all ever, if you hear that song, you're immediately walking across a field and doing the Judd Nelson putting your fist in the air. Like that's it you get a immediate you just immediately taken back to watching the movie. And I don't think that it's as poignant. I don't think the beginning or the end of the movie are as poignant without this particular song. I think that they did a great
Interesting.
job.
Duke, what do you think?
Yeah, it's it just sums everything up and so nicely. And yeah, rewatching it, I was like, oh, I didn't actually know that they play the song kind of softly, just the beginning of it, while they're all getting dropped off. So, but yeah, I mean, Don't You Forget About Me, I think sums up kind of, the whole movie, like it's like you're gonna move on, we're all gonna drift apart again, but don't forget the experience that we had today. And I'm not just,
Mhm.
and also it's just a great. I mean, yeah, I like '80s music, so I'm listening to that, when I'm pulling the playlist up. So
It's a
it's a
great
good
80s
song.
song.
That and St. Elmo's Fire, just bangers.
Speaking of 80s music, I feel like there might be some 80s music in our recommendations. So,
Hmm.
No.
it might,
Yes.
come on, guys.
Raph, was that a personal? Was that just a personal soundbite you recorded?
Yeah, that's me. That's
Oh,
a.
that's you. Sounds.
It's Bob. We got Bob to cry
Oh,
for us.
oh,
No,
is
it's
that actually
Rand.
Bob?
No, no.
You made Bob cry, is what you mean.
Yeah, we
First, I
made
thought you were
Bob
talking
cry.
about Bob's from Bob's Burgers, and then I was like, "Oh, Bob Graham," and then who
Yeah,
does
Bob
that?
Cram,
Bob Graham.
our own Bob. I was trying to think of someone from the website. It's Doll.
Yeah.
We
RJ,
make
what
Doll
did you
cry
do?
all the time. All right. Before you guys, I had the segue lined up, Duke, and you just shot me down.
Sorry,
You
we can
just shot
redo
it
it. We can
down.
redo it. Here, I got
No,
it.
no, it's
Uh,
okay. This is all staying in.
okay, good.
So, as I was saying, there might be some 80s music in our recommendations. So, I think we can, we can tell what said recommendations are if you guys
Okay.
are ready for it.
Oh, I'm
Unless
ready.
you got any last thoughts on the Breakfast Club.
Last thoughts. Ali Sheedy's nail biting, loudest nail biting I've ever heard, ever.
Hurts. My teeth were hurting.
Like I'm always like, what is she doing? Biting her knuckle? But no, she's
Yeah.
like,
Just
it
like
makes that's the one nitpick I'd have with the movie. The nail biting is way too loud.
I doubt it's her. That's probably just some
Yeah,
clever
I know.
sound design that's going.
I'm just saying, like, it's just like, I'm always like, what is she doing? And then it's like, nail biting that loud? How? That's my hot take with the Breakfast Club.
That's
Nail
the one
biting too
nitpick.
loud.
Too
Yes.
loud. I don't know how to segue back to recommendations from nail biting.
These are gonna be some nail biting recommendations.
Some nail biters. Yeah. Okay, it's
Yeah.
gonna the anticipation will have you biting your nails while you wait to see what it is that we recommend for the Breakfast Club. Duke, RJ, you guys know the rules for recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
I know the rules. We probably have some returning listeners out there. They know the rules. But just in case we have any new listeners out there who do not know the rules, for each movie that we introduce into the canon, we also recommend 3 things each to check out if you like said movie. The connections to said movie can be as loose or as on the nose as you like. For those recommendations, at least one of them has to be another movie. The other 2 things, however, can be any and everything else. It can be more movies. It could be an album, a band, 80s music. It could be a TV show. It could be a book, a comic book, a painting, a restaurant,
Recipe.
a city, a recipe, a museum, literally anything. We like to get super creative. We like to get really weird with it. So yeah, with all of that, I think we can jump in. And for order of recommendations, we'll go Duke, RJ, Raph.
All right.
So Duke, kick us off.
Let's see. What do I want to pick? Yeah. Okay. First, the obvious choice would seem to be St. Elmo's Fire, since it's almost like a pseudo sequel. Hughes has no part in it, but instead of high schoolers, we're going into college. I'm not. Instead, I'm going with what apparently is a pseudo sequel to a different, iconic, and beloved teen 80s movie, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I'm talking about The Wild Life, written by Cameron Crowe, who, of course, wrote Fast Times. Literally only picking this because I also watched this recently. Otherwise, I'd
Nice.
pick a different 80s movie. But, let me run down this cast. Not as good as a Brat Pack cast, but we got Sean Penn. Oh, no, this is Fast Times. We got Sean Penn's brother, Chris Penn, who I actually quite like. It's, again, gone too soon. Leah Thompson, of course, gotta love her. We got Eric Stoltz, the original Marty McFly. Rick Moranis is in this, actually. And Randy Quaid makes kind of a impactful cameo of sorts. Just kind of, it's again, dealing with the end of high school, you're a young adult, trying to find your place in this world. There's some partying, there's some life lessons to be learned. Just a fun 80s movie, they don't make these anymore. So not like this, at least. So yeah, again, Southern California, R-rated, Cameron Crowe. So if you like Fast Times, it's kind of a similar style and dialogue. So yeah, Wildlife.
Nice. Good pick.
Thank you.
Speaking of Fast Times, in the write-up that I did for the website, I mistakenly said that without The Breakfast Club, we wouldn't get movies like Blank and Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I recently looked it up. Fast Times at Ridgemont High came out 3 years before The Breakfast Club. So,
but it's very
suck
different.
it, Raph.
Yeah.
What a moron.
Fast Times is very different, though, than Breakfast Club. Like, Breakfast, I wouldn't even compare those two because they're such... It's like, I don't know. Breakfast Club, despite it also being R-rated, I believe, it feels more easily accessible to a wider audience, where Fast Times gives off a more, like, late teens, you gotta be, like, 16, 17, 18. We're like a kid, a 12-year-old could watch Breakfast Club, I think, and kind of get a message, where Fast Times has more edge, I guess. It has a bit
Fast
more of an
Times
edge.
There's still characters
more
have a
serious
little
issues,
bit
I think,
of
too.
depth. I would say not as much as The Breakfast Club, but it's certainly starting to trend in that direction. But awesome, great first pick. RJ, what have you got?
All right. So my first pick is, and I can't believe that Duke mentioned this movie earlier. You are the only other person I've ever heard mention it aside from my brother and myself. Rad.
Yeah, who do you think told me to watch that movie?
Yeah, that's not surprising, but so Rad, the 1986 BMX bike racing movie where young, a high school age kid skips taking the SATs and breaking his mother's heart to qualify to ride in this big BMX bike race that's coming to his hometown. It is one of my favorite 80s movies, and it's amazing, and you should watch it.
That skip in the SATs is such a minor plot point. Like, it never gets brought up again.
Yeah.
RJ, I think your brother recommended this on another episode.
Well,
which is amazing if that's true.
I would be surprised. This was a movie that we had, recorded on VHS and watched many, many times. It was one of those, few movies we can agree on. This was always one.
It is just, what's that word? Quintessential? Is that how you say that? You like quintessentially 80s?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
And Jake Gyllenhaal just mentioned it in an interview for Roadhouse as another movie. Like, if he had to pick an 80s movie to remake, he'd want to do Rad.
That's awesome.
I'd watch that. I love that.
And the soundtrack is awesome.
Is it rad?
It is rad.
I've got several of those songs on my workout playlist because they are just good jams to inspire you.
I love it. All right, I guess I got to check out this movie now. Only one letter off from my name, so.
Well, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Whatever that's worth. Okay.
Not much.
So I think for my first recommendation, I'm going to go with 80s music, and this album somehow did not make it onto my initial list of potential recommendations, which is kind of criminal considering how often I listened to this album. I think it's one of the best albums from the 80s. It is the quintessential new wave album. Also came out in 1985. So along with The Breakfast Club, really like represents the height of 80s pop entertainment. I am, of course, recommending Songs from the Big Chair by Tears for Fears. One of
Damn it,
Mm.
Raph.
the best albums, hands down, ever made. RJ, was that one of yours?
Yes.
No
Oh,
way
no.
did you guys mention the
I'm
exact
not.
same album.
Yeah. It's
Oh,
okay. I had a
no.
backup. I had a
Okay.
backup.
I'm so sorry. I have backups, but it came to mind when Duke was talking about 80s music, and I was like, oh, this is like my favorite album from the 80s. So good. If you've
Absolutely.
never listened to it, which I don't know how anyone hasn't. Duke, have you ever listened to this album?
Oh man, like I say, I'm not that well versed in music that finite. Is that the word? Like I know songs, but like
Mhm.
naming bands for certain songs or albums, no. Tears for
Oh,
Fears, I have heard of them and listened
you
to
know
them, but
everybody wants to rule the world.
oh yeah, of course.
You should listen to this whole album. It's like
Well, is it from
under
what's the album right now? Repeat it?
Songs from the Big Chair. It's like under 50 minutes. Every song is an absolute banger. RJ can attest to it.
1985. You've already got
Yes.
me convinced to check
Yeah.
it out. Oh,
Yeah.
Shout.
I
Oh
mean,
yeah, everybody wants to rule the world.
Yeah.
Oh
I
yeah,
can
yeah.
listen to
I've
it
heard these.
like
Yeah, I've
as
heard some
soon
of
as we're
these.
done.
Yeah.
Shout. You can't go wrong
It's a
with
great
Shout.
album to listen to while you're like cleaning your house.
Yes.
Mm.
Great Saturday morning chores album. I love it. And I'm sorry, RJ.
That's okay.
All right, Duke. Back to you.
All right. I'm trying to think how I want to end. No, I'm gonna go. No, I'll do this one next. My next pick is a book. It is Brat, an 80s story by Andrew McCarthy. Of course, we didn't really mention this, I guess, talk about The Breakfast Club, but The Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire are kind of the two films that determine whether you're in the Brat Pack, which was a term a journalist coined for these up-and-coming 80s actors where he thought were kind of bratty when he was interviewing them. So Andrew McCarthy was in St. Elmo's Fire. But Brad, I guess, kind of details, his life growing up in the 80s and all the movies he made and kind of his experience being classified as a brat, member of the Brat Pack. And great read if you like 80s movies and background as I do. And he's actually doing I think it's going to be a docu-series where he's going to travel across the states kind of interviewing all these different Brat Pack members. So it's getting an adaptation. But yeah, great book. Brat, an 80s story by Andrew McCarthy.
Nice. Adding that to the reading list.
It's good.
Good pick. I like it. All right, RJ. Back to
All
you.
right. Next pick. This is a 1990 movie, so just outside of the 80s, but if you watch it, it is very much an 80s movie. Christian Slater at his finest in Pump Up the Volume.
Nice.
So Pump Up the Volume is a teenager moves across the country and has, go into a new school, and he is super shy, doesn't speak to anybody, and his parents get him a radio to try and I can't even remember. I think like to try and talk to his friends from back home, but it's too far away. So he uses the radio to start broadcasting and just starts talking like he's a radio show host, and somehow eventually people end up listening, and so he's running a pirate radio. And there is also a horrible principal or superintendent, I can't remember, but awful school people that are in charge, that he tries to uh, expose for their wrongdoings. And there's a romance with a quirky listener who is a fellow student in his school, and it's all around awesome.
Nice.
Not for
Pick.
kids. Don't watch this with
Sorry,
your kids.
Duke. You can't watch.
So
Oh, fiddlesticks.
Movies used to have Christian Slater. That was like a thing, and it was cool.
It was a thing
great.
that happened.
Yeah,
It definitely
and
was.
it was a lot of fun. I love it. Great pick. Wow. I forgot I have to do at least one movie because I have 3 things and none of them are movies. Okay, but for my second pick, I'm going to John Hughes got his start writing in the humor magazine National Lampoon, which is a nationalized version of the Lampoon, which started at Harvard. I think it's still going today, like humor magazine there. And then they took it national. That's how Hughes got his start. He was writing like humor columns for them. And then someone was like, hey, we're getting into filmmaking as well. You should write us a script or something. I don't know if that's actually how it went, but basically the gist of the story. I'm not recommending that magazine, but I am going to recommend another humor magazine, which I don't know if it's still in circulation. I don't know if there are any magazines still in circulation, but shout out to the magazine industry. A lot of cool work that has been done there. I don't know if you guys were ever fans of Mad Magazine back in the day, but I thought when I was in like 4th grade, I thought that was like the funniest stuff in the world. So that's what I'm recommending. Mad Magazine. If you can find any current copies or old copies, give them a read because they were hysterical.
All right, I guess my turn again, hey?
Yeah.
Excellent suggestion.
What
Thank
was
you,
that?
RJ. Duke, have you not heard of Mad Magazine?
Oh, I've heard of Mad Magazine.
Okay.
I've seen them in stores. Not recently, but...
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure. Your lack of reaction made me think that you had no idea what I was talking about.
Oh, no. Don't you worry. I know, man. It's he's got like a little kid's face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know, man.
Right,
Don't you worry.
All right. Well, you didn't know Tears for Fears.
I didn't say that. I said I didn't know the album, but I was familiar with Tears for Fears.
I'm just putting words in your mouth now.
Don't you start, Raph. Don't mess with the bull. You'll get the horns.
Nice.
Oh.
Nice.
Oh. Well played.
Done.
I was waiting the whole episode to somehow work that in there. Okay. My last pick. I'm going to Riverdale. Of course, the TV show based on Archie comics. But specifically the episode called The Midnight Club, which is set in the 90s and has all of the main teenage cast, in air quotes, playing their parents as teenagers in the 90s. And it's kind of like a Breakfast Club homage. Anthony Michael Hall plays the principal of Riverdale High in the 90s because he's always down to just go on any show that's going to mention the Breakfast Club in a role. So that was fun. And yeah, it's just them and they're all kind of in detention. So it's like, yeah, Breakfast Club homage, but within the Riverdale world with a extended cameo from Anthony Michael Hall as kind of the principal, kind of doing a riff on Paul Gleason. So yeah, that's my last pick.
Nice. I love it. Great shout. RJ.
All right.
What do you got? What's your last one?
So my last pick, it is a 90s movie, 1993, but it's set in the 70s. Dazed and Confused. Another kind of coming of age high school movie. And if you've never seen it, then that is a tragedy that should be rectified. Some high school somewhere, kids are getting out for the summer, and you see what everybody's doing on their first night of freedom once school lets out. There's a big party. There are groups from all different walks of, or from all different cliques that mingle throughout the movie. Lots of tensions but also camaraderie that comes up between some of the different cliques, and I and just Matthew McConaughey being creepy but awesome.
Yeah. That's the best way to describe it.
So yes, that is my last pick.
I love it. RJ, this is one of my favorite movies of all time, like top 3 for me, and it constantly breaks my heart whenever I think about the fact that it's not in the canon. Like I've cried multiple times when I think about the fact that I will never get a chance to talk about Dazed and Confused on this podcast, because that movie means so much to me personally, and I thought it would mean enough to a few other people, enough so that it would make it into the canon. But I guess Duke shot that down because he hates fun and he hates all good things in the world.
Hey. I ain't
Damn
the one
it, Duke.
responsible. Blame
We
Sailor.
should do a
Raph, the
special
rule on
episode.
Strange Wasteland is we blame Sailor if we ever have a problem.
Okay.
Sailor is always to blame.
That's fair.
But then Sailor will tell me to blame you. So I don't know who to blame. It's a blame circle.
It goes back. It always goes back to Sailor.
And then poor RJ and I, we're so upset that Dazed is not in the canon.
Raph, we should do like a special episode that's like
bonus.
A movie that
bonus,
should
not
be
in the canon.
Yeah, I'll do a bonus episode of all of the movies that make me cry when I remember that they're not in the canon.
Like when Lifetime does like an unauthorized story. And it's like a biopic, but it's unauthorized. Just Dazed and Confused, an unauthorized canon entry.
Yeah, I could do an entire season about
you could do a whole podcast, Dazed and Confused pod, but
just a season of movies that I'm sad about the fact about them not being in the canon.
Exactly. This should be in the canon from Raph.
Per Raph, yeah.
Raph's rants. That should be at the end of every episode. You should get a brief 1-minute rant to just say this movie isn't in the canon, and I think it should be.
Raph's rants or Raph's rambles?
Definitely
RJ,
well played.
I absolutely love that pick. For my third recommendation, because I have to go with a movie, Emilio Estevez is great in this, but it's unfortunately not the best Emilio Estevez movie. We all know that the best Emilio Estevez movie is actually D2, The Mighty Ducks. So that's my final recommendation. Yep. That's it. No questions asked.
Fantastic.
No.
Fantastic. Yes. No notes.
Can't get into those movies, but
sorry, what was that?
I said I couldn't get into the Mighty Duck movies.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Duke, you really do hate fun.
You're Canadian. Isn't hockey
I know.
that you're all supposed to be into?
Me and Raph have talked on a different episode of the pod where I always wanted to play basketball and Raph seemed to always want to play hockey, but yet we grew up in the wrong jurisdictions, wrong parts of the country.
Well, Duke, your high school didn't have enough people to field. What would you say for hockey? You didn't have enough people to build the hockey team.
No. This is Canada. Well, there's always enough for a hockey team.
Out of 15 kids?
No, hockey teams don't go off that narrow of an age. It's like within 3 years.
Oh, okay.
Like
so between 12, the 50 kids in the
15,
high school.
And then it's under 18. So you always get a 3-year window. And then, small towns, you just combine. Someone's got to drive half an hour to play hockey. They'll drive 2 hours to play hockey.
Yeah.
People love their hockey here.
I love it.
Well, I like the rink burgers at the hockey rinks, so
All right, let's run through our recommendations one last time before we get out of here. Same order. Duke, what are your 3?
First, I had the 1984 movie The Wildlife, written by Cameron Crowe. Then I had the autobiographical book Brat, an 80s story by Brat Pack member Andrew McCarthy. And then I had the episode of television, The Midnight Club from Riverdale, which features a cameo from Breakfast Club star Anthony Michael Hall.
Amazing. RJ, what are your three?
All right. First was the 1986 BMX bike racing movie. That was, I don't know why that was hard to get out. Rad. And then the 1990 Christian Slater movie, Pump Up the Volume. And 1993's epic film that should be in the canon, Dazed and Confused.
I love it. Great picks. I've got the classic 1985 new wave album, Songs from the Big Chair by Tears for Fears. I've got the Humor Magazine, Mad Magazine, and I've got the best Emilio Estevez movie, D2, The Mighty Ducks. Duke, RJ, we did it. We went back to high school. We survived. We have crossed cliques, and now we're all lifelong friends based on the Saturday detention that we spent together.
Mm-hmm.
The initial idea for this episode was to release it around the anniversary date for when they spend the Saturday detention together. That unfortunately did not work out, but still an absolutely great episode. Thank you both for joining me for it. This
You're
was
welcome.
an absolute blast.
And
Thanks for having me.
I'm sorry, Raph, that I thought of this too late, but I thought I should have picked like a breakfast recipe to fit into the Breakfast Club.
Oh, we all should have picked cereals.
I thought of that 2 minutes ago. So
yeah. there were these.
I should have done a weird sandwich recipe.
Yeah,
like that. Yeah,
a sushi restaurant.
Yeah, sushi or butter and what are those called? Pixie sticks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were these guys in my high school, and every year they would do these really great creative group costumes. And one year they were the Breakfast Club. And when I heard that these guys were going around as the Breakfast Club, I was super excited because I loved the movie. I was like, oh man, I can't wait to see like the Bender costume, the basket case costume and all that. And it turned out that they were just different cereal mascots, which was still hilarious.
Oh,
but I was slightly disappointed.
Raph got all excited like he was at Disneyland about to see Mickey Mouse, and then it was like, nope.
And then Mikey Mouse comes out, you know.
Exactly. the New York, or the Hollywood Times Square, whatever it's called.
Yeah, the Times Square Mickey Mouse. Yeah,
the unauthorized Mickey Mouse.
Smoking a cigarette under the mask.
Under his mask.
Amazing.
It's not even actually a mouse. He's like a squirrel that's got.
Yeah. They got a squirrel costume and just spray painted it black.
Oh, hilarious. Well, thank you guys again for joining. This really has been so great. It's been awesome reliving high school with the both of you. Duke, as the sort of master of ceremonies over at the website proper, is there anything that folks should be looking out for on the website?
Well, let's see. We just started dropping Vault 4 write-ups for the Canon, Harry Potter 1, American History X, The General. So, those are 3 very different movies from different eras. So check those out. In April, later in the month, we're going to be releasing our collaborative ranking of the DC Extended Universe now that that's come to a conclusion. And on the podcast note, Total Recast is now back on Apple Podcasts.
Nice.
So, if you've been bummed out that the latest season of Total Recast wasn't on Apple, it's now on Apple. So give it a little search, download, share, 5 stars, then go to the Canon, 5 stars that. And Total Recast will return at some point later this year.
Amazing.
That's all. RJ, you got anything for the site coming up? You got a Canon, actually.
Yeah, I've got a Canon write-up coming out next Thursday, April 4th, or I guess
tomorrow.
It's Thursday, April 4th. Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers.
Oh, sweet.
And I will try not to spend the whole of the article talking about how awesome Legolas is, and
RJ,
Yeah.
that's the
all of
point of the
his, all of
canon
his.
is for everybody to just write up what they like. The written canons are you just pick whatever you like and write about it. So if you want to
I
spend
feel
a whole
like
2
I
paragraphs
could,
about Legolas,
yeah,
go for it.
I could spend days, but that's okay. And then we also, the controversial movies, or 100 most controversial movies from whenever. Somebody help
From
me.
whenever, yeah. Yeah, we got that coming out later this April too. So,
Nice.
Oh,
and I think we also have a
uh,
little top 20 Hitchcock list coming out at the end of April.
Ooh,
So,
ooh.
yeah,
spicy.
we got a couple good lists coming out, and yeah, always something on the website. So, screenagewasteland.com.
A lot of
Check
good
us out.
stuff. I love it.
Yeah.
Can't wait to read the canon entries, all the lists and whatnot. In less exciting news, I will be dropping a new movies to stream write up Monday following this release, and also that Monday there may or may not be a review of Monkey Man coming out from yours truly.
Well, there you go.
TBD,
Mm.
but that could be in the mix as well. But even if it's not in the mix, you've got a ton of great stuff. Everything that Duke and RJ just mentioned. Of course, you'll have the Canon podcast, which will be back on the same feed that you're listening to us right now. Join us next week. We're going to be talking about Pulp Fiction. That's going to be a fun one. Really excited for that.
Ooh. Who do you got on that? Give us a tease.
We've got some outsiders, 2 returning guests.
Okay.
Both
Oh,
of them are named Dave, so that'll be interesting.
okay. You
But yeah,
love
2 of my friends.
the Sean and Sean, Dave and Dave.
Yeah, just love
You seek
confusing
them out,
everyone.
yeah.
Yeah, but it should be
Do you
fun.
only have friends that can come in pairs with their names? Is that
Yeah, that's sort of how it works. If you're
That's
going to
kind of
be
like
someone outside of Screen Age Wasteland, you need to
need
share a
a,
name with another friend.
that's like
Yeah.
podcasts are almost like the worst platform to do that. Where at least if you're doing like a video interview or something, 2 Daves is fine. But as long as they don't have similar sounding voices, it'll be easier to keep them apart.
We'll be able to tell which Dave is which.
Okay, good.
It should be fun. But yeah, we'll be back on the same feed next
Pulp
week with
Fiction.
Pulp Fiction, and we'll be back the following Wednesday after that, and then one after that. We got a lot more great episodes planned for this season, and we're looking forward to it. But yeah, thank RJ, Duke. Thank you guys again, listeners. Thank you as always for sticking it out with us. We will see you next week, and until then, we'll catch you in the wasteland.